Alright everyone, so this video is to walk you through your first essay assignment, which is due this Sunday at midnight. And because of the very quick turnaround time from the start of the course, this is a mini essay. So you are basically going to be choosing one of the authors that you read this week in this unit. So either Columbus, De Vaca, or Bradstreet. And you're going to develop a written analysis of that work using contextual elements from their life, the historical situation, what was happening in terms of a philosophical, social, religious, etc. movement. So you're basically going to be doing what I've done in the lectures, which is take the text and break it down in terms of its literary aspects, but then you're also going to be simultaneously incorporating biographical information about the author or what was happening during this time period. So all of this is to kind of look at how this author and their work, because all of these are very important works and authors, how they impacted the national identity that was being formed at this time period. So, for example, Columbus's impact on our national identity is quite obvious in the fact that we celebrate Columbus Day, correct? But you need also to look a little bit further to think about how he portrayed the relationship between the settlers and the native populations. If you chose to do Cabeza de Vaca, you could do the exact same analysis where you're looking at the text, but you want to examine how the text portrays those Native American populations versus the settlers. So remember how I pointed out the language that Columbus uses is very different than the language that De Vaca uses. The imagery that they portray is different. When Columbus is talking about the native populations, he's referring to them as almost objects. They're less than people. And he's describing sort of the richness of the land and how it's going to basically be very profitable for his investors, the king and queen. De Vaca humanizes the native population with the language that he uses. He gives very vivid descriptions of their practices, their religious beliefs, and the ones that he actually points out as being somewhat hypocritical is his own religion, is the Christians. So these are all things you could bring up in any essay about Columbus or De Vaca. If you talk about Anne Bradstreet, you might want to look at breaking down her poems not only by their poetic merit, so look at the structure, look at the stanzas, look at the imagery, look at the symbolism, look at the rhyme scheme, but also examine why Anne Bradstreet was important as the first transatlantic female poet. Why does it matter that she gives this very intimate look at family life and religious life during this time period? What does she say about these things? And what do they let us see about Puritan society at this time? So all of these are thoughts that you might just run through whichever author you choose to do. So think about, and most importantly, why does this text matter? Why do we read this text? Why does it help create part of our American identity? So some questions to think about. What does the text do? What's the goal of the text? What are they trying to achieve with that text? What's the structure or the subject matter or the tone? What does that show about the author or society during this time? So when you look at Columbus's tone, it's very different than De Vaca's, for example. Or if you look at Bradstreet's, you're seeing an understanding of what the family and religious structures were during this time period. What does the text say about the intersections of these major themes of religion, society, family, identity? How does the work influence our modern perception of history or national identity? So how does something like De Vaca portray a certain dynamic between the native populations and the settlers that we still study and learn from today? Or how does Columbus do the same thing? Or how does Bradstreet do the same thing? So you need to use at least one research source in your work. There are a number of links throughout all of the content that I gave you for this week. You can use any of those as long as you choose a credible, informed source. So if you use something like history.com or biography.com or PBS. Any of these would be fine, just as long as you're not using something that's not credible like Wikipedia. So you'll be graded on making sure, even though it's a short essay, making sure that you have a clear thesis and main ideas with good, solid evidence from the text. This means that you pull quotes from the text and you use those quotes to illustrate or show what you're talking about. You do the same thing with your research source. You should be pulling in direct quotes from your source to show or add credibility to your argument. So you're showing me that somebody else agrees with what you're saying or is adding to what you're saying from a very credible source. So your essay, being a mini essay, is 1 to 2 pages in length and is due by Sunday, June 10th at midnight. It's important that you understand that minimum page length must be met. So this means to the very bottom of the page. Now, I will say this. Normally, my essays are 3 to 4 pages in length. So you have to write at least 3 pages. Being a mini essay, I do expect you to write at least 1 page. In all honesty, if this is a good extended argument, it will probably be at least 1.5 pages or 2. You're always welcome to write more. You just can't write less. If you do write less, I do have to take off points. Remember, everything's going to be checked through SafeAssign as well, and then you're going to be examined or graded on these criteria. So you're going to make sure that you have good analysis of the work and its concepts, as well as looking at the author or the historical situation. Lots of good, solid evidence from the text and from your research sources. Again, making sure you use the proper number of research sources, at least 1, which you need to put on a bibliography along with the text. Proper page length, MLA, and citations, so making sure you have in-text citations for any quotes. And then a fully developed essay structure. So even though it is short, I do expect an introduction with a thesis, clear main ideas with evidence, and a solid conclusion. And then making sure all of your ideas are carefully organized and clear. So when you're writing this essay, you want to make sure that you are looking at any number of some of these things. So this is how you break down the literature in terms of its literary merits. You can look at characterization. How does the author or the narrator portray themselves or their characters? Are they archetypes? Are they protagonists, antagonists? Are they flat, dynamic, static? Look at literary devices. Look at similes, personifications, foreshadowing, flashbacks, irony. Look at the structure. Look at the dramatic arc, the conflict. So is it man versus man, man versus nature, that sort of thing. Look at the point of view. Look at the resolution. Is there a resolution or not? Look at literary concepts like themes, symbols, motifs, allusions, style. And then, of course, look at the historical contextualization of the author, the work, what was happening during the time period, and maybe what were some of the ethical, social, or moral issues that are being discussed in the text. So this is due on Sunday, June 10th at midnight. If you have any questions, let me know. But otherwise, I think you guys are going to do a great job.